So my name is Sherif Mansour. I'm a product manager at Atlassian, all the way from Sydney in Australia. And I think I'm just getting over my jet lag today or last night. And I'm going back home tomorrow just to don't ask why. So I'm here to talk about open teamwork. But before I do, I want to share a little story. A few years ago, I was at a friend's son's soccer football match. You call it football here, right? Football? Right, Lloyd. Football match. And it was a close game. It was halftime, and the kids run off, and they get in a circle, and they got their hands on their legs, and huffing and puffing, and the water bottles are coming up, and all the kids are grumbling, and then this one kid emerges, and I'm watching from the sideline, and I think maybe he's the captain or something, and he says, guys, just stop talking, and everyone looks up, and there's like this moment of silence, like the inspirational speech is coming, and he says, the second half, we just need to do one more thing, and everyone's looking up, and I'm like in the distance watching we just need to score more goals. I was just like, what did he just say? Like, are you serious? Some of the kids were like, thank you, I forgot at halftime. That's what we was like, what was he expecting? But I was kind of laughing at that and reflecting, and sometimes the things we need to do, the most obvious things in life, are actually quite hard to do, aren't they, right? So if I want to get fit, right, what do I need to do? Just do some exercise, go to the gym. I clearly don't go to the gym, but it just takes discipline and time to do that. Lots of little things. And so today I'm talking about open teamwork, which I guess is a title for what we at Atlassian believe is the future of teamwork. We believe if you make teams more open, you'll have much more productive teams. Sounds simple to say, like scoring more goals. But I think in reality, it's much harder to do in the day-to-day life of business due to different cultural challenges in your organization, or maybe different organizational sizes, or really it's just people problems, right? I think we forget, everyone here that works in some sort of technology, that all technology at the end of the day is made by people. And I know it sounds cliche, but at the end of the day, it's probably the single-handedly the most important thing that we need to keep remember. We can talk about transforming our businesses. We can talk about fixing a DevOps loop, making the software and development teams work a lot better. At the end of the day, we can have all the tooling in the world, but it's all about the people, right? So this is my big disclaimer at the start. I'm not going to help you work out how to hire better people and how to grow your people. That's a big problem. But I would argue that probably should be everyone here in the room should be thinking about that for the teams that they work with every day. So you probably heard this phrase before. It's people over practices over tools. So I'm standing here from a software vendor that sells this thing down here, the size 10 font, if you can't see it at the back. And I'm telling you, it probably has very little to do with this thing down here. It has almost everything to do with this thing up here, right? Now, of course, I think our tools are pretty cool. I was a customer, and I love the tools, and I wanted to work for the company that made the tools. And you probably saw some awesome ways you can extend and utilize Confluence and Jira and all our products from all the different app vendors outside. And I hope your mind's buzzing with a lot of different ways you can extend our products. But it's just a reminder that at the end of the day, everything's really about the people and the practices that we give them. I think there's a gentleman called Christo Carman. You guys heard of the company TransferWise? TransferWise, right? He's CEO of TransferWise, and this is like one of my favorite all-time quotes, is that our product or maybe our service or whatever you do is just an outcome of the people we hire and the decisions they make. The people we hire and decisions they make. Simple formula, score more goals, right? It's really hard to do. So I'm here to share with you the things that we have tried to do to keep an open and an open culture in our company. So I've seen Atlassian go from about 150 people to, last I heard, we're 3.5 to the 4,000 person mark. And what I'm sharing with you is a bunch of the practices side of things on things that I think have helped us go really well. I'm sharing with you the things that were successful for us. So there's been a lot of failures. I'm just sharing you the highlights reel. And these particular, I guess, cultural practices I feel have scaled with us. So the ones I'm sharing worked when we were 100 and 150 people, and still work today that we're 3,500 people. But before I jump into that, who knows who that person is in the corner? Steve, your mate, is like he's your mate. Can I say mate here? He's your friend, Steve, my mate, Steve. Steve Jobs. We love to celebrate the lone genius, don't we? Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk. But when we think about it, Steve didn't really make Apple. His whole team did, right? Neil Armstrong didn't go to the moon. That was NASA. But we as an industry and society love to celebrate an individual. But in the heart of every amazing human achievement is a team. Teams are really the most important unit that we should be thinking about. Now, and we obsess over this at Atlassian. I learned the other day that you guys know the Nobel Prize Award. For the first time 2 years ago, first time in history, more teams won Nobel Prize awards than individuals, which was really awesome to see that change is happening in our society. Now, we obsess over the word teams at Atlassian. Our stock ticker is called Team, funnily enough. In our Sydney office, I took this photo standing from one of our buildings, pointing to another building. Our events team went and stuck this massive hashtag team on the front of it. And this is all cool and fun. You're like, yeah, Atlassian team company makes a lot of sense. But we really do obsess a lot about teams. One thing that I've been really proud that our diversity and inclusion team's been doing is measuring diversity and inclusion, not at a company level, but at a team level. So if it's the team that's doing the unit of work, reporting on these numbers at a broader level can give you a very different picture and tell a very different story to the individual team doing it. So maybe if you're in small to medium organizations out there, you're probably thinking about how can you encourage your organization to think about the smallest unit of work, the team that does the work, and how can you measure diverse thinking at that level. Teamwork is incredibly hard, but so it's easy to say score more goals. It's hard to get the team rallied to go and do that. We did some research 2 years ago on thousands of customers on the different the characteristics of team members. And 78% of these customers, and these customers range from startups to 10,000 person organizations, the number one stat that was the highest that stood out was this one. 78% of people don't trust their team members. That's crazy. So that's basically like, if we were all one team, almost everyone here would not trust this front row here. Like that's just pretty crazy. Sven does look a bit cheeky, but he's a nice guy. And there's another research project that Google did. Who's heard of the Google Aristotle project? It's a fancy word, Aristotle, 2 people. So Google did this research, right, of what makes a successful team. What makes a successful team? And they tried to work out what was the number one trait. You can look this up on Google. And when I first heard about this, I was thinking, oh, it's got to be something like autonomy or like a rock star leader or great management or amazing tooling. The number one trait was that everyone in the team felt psychological safety. So everyone in the team felt that they could share how they felt without being embarrassed, without people thinking that person's got silly ideas, and they felt safe about it, which is pretty powerful. Those teams didn't have amazing rock stars or didn't have like, the 10x people or like the crazy autonomy. Even some of the ones that weren't fully autonomous teams, they performed better when everyone in the team felt like they trusted each other. And that says a lot about building a successful team, doesn't it? How do we foster this sense of trust? So what if I told you that after all these years, Atlassian's been around for 16 years, I think, we have found the perfect team, right? So the perfect team, and I can tell you about all the attributes of this team. They are very, very efficient, and they found the best way to getting their work done. So I've documented some of these team attributes here. So you'll see they have very, very clear processes. I'm sure they documented them in Confluence. That must be good, right? Measure outputs. They reduce any variability that exists. Highly structured roles. Super awesome managers, because managers are very important. And all their tools that we built for them were personal. I wonder when you're thinking about what team this is, what is coming to your mind? You're probably thinking like the Googles, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Southwest Airlines. It's these guys here. So around 120 years ago, Bethlehem Steel in Pennsylvania, in the 1800s, these guys were subject to a famous experiment, these factory workers. And they were trying to work out how can we make the teams as productive as possible. And what they worked out was that if we gave people these specialist tools, so they made different types of tools for the different types of coal that they need to shovel. They also worked out that the optimal weight for a shovel was 9.5 kilograms. That's why I would never survive being a coal shoveling person. And they worked out the perfect time that employees should take rest breaks and all that kind of stuff. And the outcome, they quadrupled the efficiency. And this has been a pretty famous write-up. There's been all these like management textbooks about it. It's pretty awesome. So what can we learn from Bethlehem Steel? Well, I don't know if we should learn anything really, because they lived in a world that was very predictable, didn't they? When they came into work one day, the next day looked exactly the same, right? You still had to go shovel that coal and put it wherever they put the coal. It's a very predictable world. But we live in an insanely unpredictable world, don't we? Right? Who would have thought that an anonymous person could create a currency? We were just talking about Bitcoin earlier today. That's $100 billion. That's more than GDP of like several countries. I think 10 years ago, no one would have said that, right? 10 years ago, no one would have said that cameras will get better at recognizing images than human beings. And that's super important for us as a society because we can do things like identify the difference between labradoodles and fried chicken. You have to look at that one carefully because it's hard. The cameras would have picked it up like that, right? But on a serious note, can do amazing things for medical and science, right? Like can identify tumors, build plastic organs that can help save lives. It's like amazing. We live in a pretty magical era. But I think the key message here is like the predictable world is gone. Teams need trust. In the next 10 years, I don't think any of us here are going to predict what's going to happen. We were joking earlier today, a group of us just after lunch, saying basically every sci-fi movie will come true, which is kind of scary, but let's not. We're not going to get all depressed at the end of this presentation. So we need to move from a world from this like predictable way of how teams work to this unpredictable way. And it's a continuous evolution, right? So away from where everything was centralized control to we need to push decisions as much as possible to the people that need to make the decisions. We used to, I think we had to make perfect decisions because it was in a predictable world, you only get one shot at it. No, we need to just keep iterating, decide and learn. Remove as much variability as possible. Long gone are the days where the boss is the expert, or we used to say like avoid conflict, but now we need to just harness friction and encourage more of that creative tension in teams. So moving from this predictable world to this unpredictable world. How do we do this? It comes back to that trust thing. So at Atlassian, we firmly believe that the key ingredient to all of this is being open. And I know I'm not a marketing, so you can trust me a bit more. No offense to the marketing people in the room. I love marketing. It sounds cliche, but it is actually really true. I have seen this myself happen multiple times. Now, I could tell you, oh, we have this company value called open company, therefore we're open, right? Like, or, you know, all the companies, we have a customer is successful or customers are very important value, right? At the end of the day, you know, you judge a book by what's inside the cover, right? So I'm not going to talk about our values for a second. And so what I want to share with you today is how I think we have helped teams be open inside Atlassian that has created that trust and it's helped them work better in an unpredictable world, right? So I hope by the end of this presentation, you get a bunch of practical ideas. Maybe you feel inspired for the different ways that you can go back to your teams and help them be more open, right? And so I'm going to talk about how we're open in 3 categories. An open way of working. So how do we make sure employees have access to all the information they need all the time? An open way of thinking. How do we make sure we can harness the group's collective power without anyone feeling they're going to be judged? And an open way of being. How can we encourage everyone to bring their whole selves to work? So I'll give you some cultural practices in each of these 3 categories. I will say another disclaimer. This is very specific to our culture. So you might try to mix and match, you might try things and some things might not work. But these are the ones that I have seen that have stuck with us from 150 to 3,500 people. And I think will hopefully keep sticking with us. So the first one, open way of working. So we all know that employees work really best when they have context for what they need to do, right? Now, every time you see something goes wrong, you just realize that person didn't have a global context or they didn't have the bigger picture in mind. So context is really king. It's the most important thing that we should be thinking about. And so for Atlassian, we model this value, if you like, where we think about our products and we think about our culture, we always say we try to be open by default. So all of you here use Jira and Confluence. When you create a Confluence space or a Jira project, you probably, some of you here are admins, probably realize that they're open by default. That is a deliberate design decision we've done to sort of try and bake some of our culture into the product. The product's an outcome of the people we hire and the decisions we make, right? Just to help encourage that. And how open are we? Well, everything from company-wide communication. I'm going to show you lots of screenshots today, so just to get a feel of like, this is what happens inside. company announcements, all that stuff. What typically might get sent an email to all staff and no one can reply to, or no one can discuss it, or a new starter starts 5 weeks later and they can't find that email. No, every employee that joins tomorrow can access the founder updates from 16 years ago. Get the context. They can write comments and they can discuss and they can debate and they can link to it and all that kind of stuff. Then there's the level deeper of like all the departments inside Atlassian share their failures and their goals and their successes. This is just, objectives and key results that a department's working on. But anyone in the company has access to this information, right? Now, I understand there are different environments with different sensitivities, but I think the mindset here is starting open by default, all the way to meeting notes. So all the way from something that the company CIOs are talking about to the meeting you had yesterday, or having all of them tracked in one place, open by default, is an incredibly powerful tool to give your team members context. So I asked around at Atlassian a couple of years ago to actually work out if I could measure this. I actually had no idea how open is Atlassian. We say we're open. How open is Atlassian? So I basically ran some SQL queries in our internal conferences to work out how transparent we were. And out of all our content, only 10, it was actually a bit less, 9 point something% is restricted. So out of everything in the company, 90% of the company's knowledge or content is available to every single employee, which is pretty crazy. If I were to give another example of openness, maybe that scared me a bit, all the employees at Atlassian knew about the company going public before anyone else did. And how big were we then? 2,000 people. I don't think any other, I was scared when they told us. I'm like, wait, does that mean I'm liable if I tell someone? Like, am I going to go to jail? Like, that's how transparent they were. And I was kind of scared, but that openness, what does it do? It creates trust. And it creates this community that people like, oh, if I'm given responsibility here, I better act appropriately. So the mindset's shifting now. So from when you create your next document or whatever, instead of thinking who needs access to this document, maybe start the other way and say, do I need to restrict this, right? You can all do this tomorrow. When you go back to your workplaces, you're probably going to either create a Word document or a conference page or a Google Doc, whatever it is. There's two mindsets you can have. Who do I need to grant access to, or can I just make it available by default? You can all start this cultural change tomorrow. So the second way I think of being open is by regular communication. Now, can I get a show of hands here who, I'm guessing all of you here, have like a company, what do you call them here? An all hands or a town hall where everyone in the company gets together regularly, right? Everyone, put your hands up. Now, keep your hands up. I want a bit of an experiment here. Put your hand down if you do these company all hands 4 or more times a year. So you're doing them once a quarter. Okay, if you don't. Keep your hand up if you're doing them 6 or more times a year. 10 times a year, you're having a company all hands. 12 times a year, so every month. 30 times a year. All right, that's pretty good. It's probably all K15t people left. I knew there'd be one example that would wreck my analogy. So we used to do company all hands once a quarter, right? So four times a year. And the company decided to shift and say, we're going to do this weekly. And can I just say, as someone who hates meetings, I was very upset about this. And I wrote a bunch of emails and I wrote a few blogs to say, like, really, is this the best use of everyone's time? We're going to move to a weekly all-hands meeting with 3,000 people. Like, it just sounds the most... I'm sure there's better things we could do with our time. But I was totally wrong. And so we have a weekly half hour. So we do 52 of these a year. That's a lot of time for a lot of employees. But the half hour each week, we have a global town hall. Now, we try to make them remote friendly so people can dial in on video. You can watch them if you can't make it. And so a company all hands meeting 52 times a year. The amount of times I have seen this help us transform or re-steer, you may have heard the phrase like, to turn the ship or re-steer the ship. The bigger you get, the harder it is, right? So the regular communication and openness in that has helped so much. Moving to a weekly frequency from a quarterly frequency has meant that we can continually transform and adapt as our environment around us change. Now, what do we talk about in these weekly all-hands meetings? We could talk about like, hey, this is the new food in the kitchen and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad we don't talk about that. We basically talk about the company goals each week, which sounds crazy. You're going to talk about the company goals 52 times a year. But roughly, so we used to have this framework, or we've recently changed the framework, but this is a framework called the VTFM framework, Vision, Themes, Focus Areas, and Metrics. It's based off a Salesforce model called V2MOM, but that doesn't matter. But this is like how the company sets their goals. So we've just switched to objectives and key results, which I'm sure all of you have heard of OKRs, yeah? Some of you? Objectives and key results. OKRs is a framework for setting goals. We talk about this each year. So it's basically, what is a company focusing on and how are we going to measure that? So every week in the all hands meetings, we just pick one of those focus areas and we talk about it every week. And we just repeat that 52 times a year. And it is so, like, not repeat the same content, but repeat the methodology. And it's so helpful in getting everyone aligned on the same page. So I hope I've given you some examples of openness that's top down maybe. What about openness bottoms up? The bigger you get, there's so much stuff going in the organization. How do you stay on top of all this open work? Well, I just want to share with you an example that I've seen worked well as we've scaled. We ask every team at Atlassian that's working on a project. We don't have a lot of standard processes. This is probably one of the few that we ask every team to do. So every team that works on a project, we ask them, what's your project poster? And a project poster is a simple set of questions around what are you doing, why are you doing it, how do you measure success, right? Now, you can have one like this. It's maybe specific to your company's culture, whatever it is. And we ask them to fill it out. And this forms a common vocabulary. The bigger you get, the harder it is for teams to communicate together and to communicate up for what you're working on. So think of it like, everyone here has a driver's license. When I pick up your driver's license, I sort of expect the format of the driver's license, and it's all the same. So I'll be able to quickly understand who you are, where you're from, and that kind of stuff. So we ask people to fill out a project poster once a week. And what happens is everyone in the company publishes their project poster. And we use Jira, but honestly, you can use any tool to try and model this. And once a week, so I literally took this screenshot this morning, so you had a fresh example from my inbox. Everyone in the company gets an email of all the projects that they're following or watching. So we use Jira to track this, so we just get people to create a new project. So I'm watching 25 projects, and I see there's 16 new updates. And so once a week, we ask every project owner to fill out their update. What do you need help on? What are you stuck on? What are your risks? What's concerning you? And then every Monday, everyone in the company gets an email for an update of the projects they're working on. And that scales really well. Like at 3,500 people, that's working really well. And so if you're responsible for a project, or maybe you're dependent on another team that's working with your team, you can watch what they're doing without having 50 update meetings with them. Oh, can I get another update meeting? Can you tell me where you're going? They just broadcast, if you like to think of it as radio, they broadcast their update and everyone consumes it. And then so that's you get the updates in the email, and at the bottom of the email, you basically get across the whole company, what are the new projects that started? So everyone in the company has access to know every single new project that started. So we're moving buildings, getting another building in Sydney. There is the team that looks after the physical building have their own project ticket. And I'm watching it because I'm curious. I want to know where they're looking at going, what office we're going to. That is transparency. So everyone can have access to the project all the time. And this ritual of like, hey, what's your project ticket? That's the terminology we use internally. Becomes this common vocabulary where that you can help teams communicate together because everyone's being open about where their project is. This isn't about judging a project success, just to be really clear. This is about just getting teams to quickly unblock themselves. When I talk to people about the value they get out of this process or the system, it's basically on Monday morning, I can come in, and if I find I can help someone unblock something, I'll go in and do that. Or maybe I just want to celebrate a team's achievements that week. I can go do that as well. So hopefully you've seen how from a company level, from our goals and objectives to our product and departments to the projects, how we try to be transparent as much up the stack and as to the bottom of the stack as possible. The last way we try to be open is to get people to have a conversation, because that's probably a good thing. Has anyone here tried our team health monitors or heard about them? A few people. So this is a simple framework that anyone can try. You don't need any of our tools to do this. When my son was 2, this is Isaac, because my son is 2, he broke his collarbone, the bone over here. He was pushing a truck down the hill. And I actually didn't know he broke his collarbone. I wasn't sure what was wrong. And you'd be amazed with a 2-year-old trying to express like where the pain is or what's happening. It's actually quite hard for them to do. So what do we do to try to diagnose what the problem is? Well, I took him to hospital. He's looking very grumpy over there. But But with the doctors, they just start asking questions and they try different things, right? So they start probing and they start saying, okay, can you lift your hand up? Or what about this? Can you try to do this for me? Can you turn around? And they through a process of conversation, they try to work out what's wrong, right? The health monitors are sort of the same. So it's a simple framework to help you ask a set of questions and get a conversation out of it. And so we have different health monitors for the different kinds of work that your teams might do. So your team may run a project, or maybe some of you here are in a management team, or some of you are in a service team, so you're providing an internal service like customer service or a help desk. And there are different templates for depending on what your team does. And each of these templates has an attribute. So it basically says, for your project team, do you feel like you have a balanced team? Do you feel like you have the right team members? And everyone in the room, in your team, shares their opinion. So Bob can say, yeah, I think I have a balanced team. And Jane says, no, I don't think I have a balanced team. And then we sort of discuss them. But we go through each of these attributes. Another attribute might be, for a project team, we say, do you have a proof of concept? Can you demo something? For a leadership team, we say, how do you think you're going with decision making, etc. And so after you do this, you go around in a circle and you talk about each of these attributes. And then what happens is you just give them a color. So you can use sticky notes, you can regular greens. So these are the attributes over here. This is one team I was in. The attributes over there. And we all put our color down. And so when I saw Lisa there, she put a red for metrics. I was like, oh, I thought we were a green. What's wrong, Lisa? Why did you put a red for that? And she'll tell me what she's thinking. And I realized maybe there's some misunderstanding, or she didn't have the right information, or maybe I didn't provide the right information she needed. But this is a framework for a conversation. So we get to the point where for most project teams, we run these regularly. So some teams run it every 2 weeks. Some teams run it once a month. But it's one of those good just self-reflection discussion things. And once you run it, you get your greens and your yellows and your reds. What do? You basically find all the reds and you go, all right, how can we make the reds turn to greens next time, right? So we say, okay, in this particular red example, we don't have a shared understanding, okay? One of the red attributes is shared understanding. So you go, okay, what can we do? Maybe we need to update our project poster so everyone's aligned on what we're doing. Maybe we need to give a demo to someone. Maybe we need to work on our elevator pitch. So you try to refine and improve that process. Make sense? So health monitors, you can just Google Team Health Monitor. There's free online, there's a PDF you can go grab, there's a video, and you can just do these in a sticky notes and a whiteboard. So there's examples of how we've tried to be open in the way we work inside the company. What about in the way we think and talk about things? Who here's read this book or heard of this book, Creativity Inc., 2 people? Ed Catmull, was he the president? I can't remember, what was he? Yeah, he was the president of Pixar movies. And he talks about in this book how in Pixar they try to encourage some creative friction to solve a particular problem. So you guys, you know the movie Toy Story? You remember Toy Story? Toy Story apparently was a train wreck. Like the production of the video was a train wreck. The story was going nowhere. They were going to cancel the project. And they created this thing called the Brains Trust. So in the book, there's a chapter about the Brains Trust. And the Brains Trust is basically a bunch of people can get in a room on a topic they're interested about, regardless of their level. So they don't have to be a manager. They may not even be involved in the project, but would like to contribute part of the story. And they just effectively work together and spar ideas on the story. But the idea here is that it's a safe place. It's not a review meeting. It's not a gate. It's a safe place to discuss and improve. So it's called the Brains Trust. And it's a feedback process as well as a process to help move your work forward. So a few of us read this book and we tried it. And it's become a bit of a practice in most of our teams inside Atlassian. We're a software company and we do a lot of demos. So we called it the Demo Trust, right? And this worked for us. And so with the Demo Trust, we just ask people to come in and just share the story of what they're trying to work on. And then people go, that doesn't make sense. Maybe we need to make this better. And we have an open discussion here. And that's open to people to join in your team that might be interested. The thing here is it's a safe place that it happens. And it's not a gate. It's not an approval step. Now, we do Demo Trusts for the team level, but our CEOs do this for the whole company on different topics. And just to show you the level of openness, they're all recorded and they're all published in Confluence. So every meeting with the CEO that you're getting feedback on something is recorded and any employee in the company has access to that at 3,500 people. Now, there has been a few that have not been published because they had some sensitive information or they got a little bit heated. Being very open with you guys. But the vast majority, over 95% of them, are published. You'll be amazed what this does for employee training and employee engagement. Like all of a sudden, any employee can hear about a meeting and actually watch a video of the meeting of maybe their department's manager getting a feedback session from one of the CEOs on a particular topic. That's a level of transparency that I have not seen anywhere else yet, but it's kind of scary that it's that transparent, but it's worked really well. It's had some negative effects too. So maybe for some people, it's made them more scared of our CEOs than bringing them closer, to be frank. But I think the benefits have far outweighed the negative implications of that. Another way we try to encourage open thinking is from day one when an employee joins your organization. So you of all here worked with graduates, right? Or what do you call them, graduates here when they finish university? Graduates, interns, yeah. They finish university and guess what? They're always smiling. They come into work and they're smiling and you're like, oh, you just haven't been here long enough. You'll be cranky soon, right? But it's a perfect time to set a tone, right? And so what we do is we have this program called the Hack House. And a Hack House is basically when all the graduates come in, we literally used to put them in a house. We got a bit too big now. We had to hire a hotel. But we used to put them in multiple houses. And they get together and this is the Sydney Hack House. There's one in San Francisco in each of the locations. There should be a video there. So I'll go back, sorry. And they get together and it's sort of like a massive camp for a week, right? Now, most of these people don't have families or kids. And so for them, it's pretty exciting because it's basically like a holiday. Oh, the video's not working. I was going to show you a video of it. Why is that going really fast? It's basically like a week away with the team. Is it going to play? It's not playing. That's all right. It's a week away with the team, but they just go together and they play together for a week. They have meals together. And at the end of the week, we ask them to do one thing, which is try to change our products and try to change something in our products. We send a bunch of mentors, so a lot of the senior people will go there for a week, and they camp together for 1 week. They'll do training sessions. They'll go how to start development in Jira, how to work as a designer, how to work as a marketer in Atlassian. And by the Friday, so they come in on a Monday, by the Friday, we ask them to do one thing, and they present to the whole company, or usually the office location now. It's getting a bit hard to present to the whole company. They present to all of the Sydney office, all of the San Francisco office, what they achieved in that week. So you set that tone really early on for graduates. And they feel like they can change the world. It's great. Like it has a really positive effect on giving people, telling them, one, that you're new here and we value your opinion and we want you to try and change our products from day one. We've seen a lot of our things in our products change as a result of them. We've seen a lot of our practices change as a result of this practice. Now, a lot of the stuff they do doesn't end up shipping, and it fails or whatever, but we set that tone early. Another way you can get feedback across the company, open and candidly, is to ask a question. This is an example of our CEO using Confluence questions here. And I won't forget this because one year he basically was like, hey, 2016 was like a year, it was 2015, he was asking for 2016. What should we be in our painted picture? Painted picture is a term some of them use to like, what should we imagine the company looks like in a year's time? And the response we had was just crazy. Across all organizations, people were sharing, I think we should do this. I think we should do that. You know, I think we should be known for this. I think we should do that. But it's an amazing way to crowdsource, you know, hundreds of people. I think we're in the maybe the 1,000 mark here, maybe. All their feedback across the organization and just listen and hear. And a lot of this ended up informing what our painted picture would be. So hopefully giving you a few ways to think about open way of thinking and to encourage that safe place so that anyone in your company can have a voice. I should say another example of the thinking, which I haven't shared. Our CEOs and founders blog, you know, they don't blog as much these days, they're a bit busy, but used to blog a lot about their failures. So you can go through their blogs and realize, hey team, to thousands of people, sorry, we use the phrase stuffed up in Australia, which is like I made a mistake. Sorry, I made a mistake and this is what I did wrong and this is what I think we learned from it. At a 1,000-person organization plus, that takes a lot of guts to do that, but it also sets a tone for everyone else. I feel safe that I can share with the company my failures. Sorry, the last section was open way of being. How do you bring your whole self to work, right? This is a journalist in Australia. The Sydney Morning Herald is an Australian newspaper, and she famously wrote the article back then. It was about the WorkLife Blend. And she was saying it's no longer about work-life balance, it's about the work-life blend. And the lines between work and personal life are blurring, right? Some of you can look at that and go, yeah, that's what all the companies want because, they're just evil, money-sucking companies. Some of you can look at that and go, actually, that is actually what's happening. Younger generations, it's just a blend. Like they enjoy the lifestyle of work and they hang out with their work friends outside their work, and it's just the things that are changing. So how do we encourage more of this blend? I think maybe what typically happens in a lot of organizations, I don't know if it does happen here. In Australia, we have this thing called a Family and Friends Day, where everyone, your company says, invite all your family and we'll go out to a park or a picnic. Do you guys? I see your head nodding. Yep. So that typically is a good example of trying to encourage that blend. These are people in your life. They support you in your job. You go to work, they help you at they come back and you share your pains and your struggles with them. So this is trying to say thank you to them, right? So what other ways do we encourage just, people just being themselves at work? Again, we set the tone from the beginning. We ask every employee, this worked when we were 10, this worked when we were 150, this still works when we were 3,500. We ask every employee to write a blog when you start. And the blog is about you personally, not your CV. We already hired you. We don't need you to show off again and pretend you're amazing and like you did all these amazing things. You're already hired, it's okay. Tell us about yourself. Like, what do you like doing? What do you not like doing? For me, this is one of the cultural practices that I love, because it's always helped a large company feel like a small team for me. And so people comment on these blogs from across the world, and they meet people with similar interests that they've never met before. And sometimes at events like this, they meet each other and they can talk and engage. But again, this is trying to encourage people from day one. Share about your hobbies, share about your personality, share about your family. What do you like doing? That's what we try to encourage from day one. It's in everyone's new onboarding or new starter plan. This is Jenny. She wrote a blog about how to make a cake. I don't know why none of my animations are working, but at the bottom of that blog, all these people started sharing cake recipes, and it just ended up being like these massive lists of comments of like, oh, this is my favorite cake recipe, and this is my favorite cake recipe. Everyone wants to be in Jenny's team. She's in Ben's team, right? She's in your team. Yeah, damn it, you got Jenny. And I hear she brings cake. She used to bring cake to work. She's on maternity leave now. Yeah, used to bring cake to work. But yeah, and I never met Jenny for months after she started. The Sydney office is pretty big, and then I bumped into her. I was like, hey, you're the cake lady that everyone talks about, and we connected. It makes a huge difference. Some of you may have heard about this before, but what do we do about remote team workers? How can they bring their whole selves to work? The Trello team have a culture. Trello team are all remote, or almost all remote, I should say. And they have a culture where they give people a budget to decorate their home office. So you can buy a desk, buy a lamp, paint a wall, get some carpet, get a bouncy ball, whatever you like. And so people, they call it remote battle stations. People decorate their remote battle stations, and they take photos and they comment and they share like, hey, this is my office. This is part of my personality at home, right? So again, to encourage that open work. Don't forget remote employees, I guess, is one thing I wanted to call out. When you think about being open, there's usually someone that is not in the office, and maybe you're in the office with a bunch of other people. How can you encourage them to be more involved in everything? This is one of the Sydney team members. You can get a life-size cutout of cardboard. So there's a piece of cardboard that's not really him, if you can't tell. The white gives it away. That's the trick, right? So this is a life-size cutout cardboard of him, and it sits in the Sydney office, and the team has stand-up around it. It's very creepy when you walk past. You're like, what the hell? But it reminds them that there's another team member here. I need to always think about, we just had an open discussion about something. He or she was not here. Let's get them part of the loop, or let's change our culture to accommodate them. Finally, this is like Newen. I'm just showing lots of examples here, right? Like Newen, he recently joined my team. I hadn't met him before. He has a daughter. He shared how he built a sandpit, right, with a company. He had hundreds of people in the company like his blog and comment and discuss and share ideas. How to build a sandpit, right? It's like just simple stuff, right? And I had a newborn. I was like, I'm not a handyman, so I'm like, oh, maybe he can help me. I asked him to build it for me. He said no, but it was cool. I really liked it. This is Georgie. Georgie was in LA. She's recently moved to New York, I think. Shared about her wedding day. Shared photos. All that kind of stuff. This is pretty open, transparent. I'm sharing happy things here, but you probably can ask Ben as well. There's a lot of sad things people share. People share problems with alcohol. People share problems about miscarriages. I've cried reading some of our blog posts. I'm tearing up now. I don't know why. I don't know why, to be frank. I don't know what the secret formula is. So I asked these people, and I asked Georgie, do you post this stuff on Facebook? They're like, no. So why do you post it in your workplace? Like, it just doesn't make any sense in my mind, right? I don't understand why they do it. But it's the cultural tone that's set at the start that has created that. Remember we talked about the safe place? The safe place where they feel like they can share that. And they all struggle together. We talked about the WorkLife Blend. I think there's an example of the WorkLife Blend here. I asked Georgie in her words, and I don't work with Georgie that often. I just messaged her. I said, I'm giving a talk. Hey, I saw your blog. Again, congratulations on your wedding. Why did you post it? Like, what does being open mean to you? And this is her words. I want to read it out to you. She says, I find bringing my whole self to work means I don't need to filter my thoughts. When I'm in a creative problem or a problem-solving setting, it's really important. I don't have to worry about other people judging me. I just say it, and then people give me feedback, and we can work together on that. So just giving you lots of examples of how you can think about how you can start or foster an open culture in your organization. Last example, I promise. Sorry, lots of examples. Some of you old-timers here probably know this. I used to work in Confluence for 7 years, and we had this. The team was going through a phase where a lot of people were having kids in the team, and so we started this culture. We used to publish our release notes. All of you have seen our Jira, public Jira, right? And so in our release notes, we started a culture where if you had a kid that was born during that release, you created a ticket for your kid, right? So this baby was shipped in Confluence 5.9, right? So if all of you use 5.9, that was when one of my kids were born. And so we used to do it. And we didn't do this as a marketing activity or whatever. Like, we did it because we were just trying to have fun and we were being open, right? And it was just more for ourselves. And you'll be amazed, like, these are people I've never met before that write comments like this. Like, your products are an outcome of the people you hire and the decisions they make, right? And it was really nice to get this stuff. And what was even more amazing was like at events, so we have an annual customer conference, it's called Summit. You meet some of these people. That like some IT admin at Disney was like, hey, I upgraded to Confluence 5.9 and I saw your kids in the release notes. I was like, what? That was kind of creepy. And he's like, no, it made my day. It was just like fun and like, and the upgrade was terrible. I was like, sorry about that. That's my fault. But yeah, this is like examples of bringing your whole self to work. So I hope you're living with a little bit of inspiration as we finish today. You've heard lots of information about how you can encourage your teams and your companies. Sometimes you feel like, oh, my company is so big, I can't influence this, but you can influence your small team, right? How to start with open way of being, open way of working. Is everyone got access to the information they need all the time? Think about communication that's regular. Think about try the team health monitors. These are just examples of what we do. Think about what you can do to encourage open way of working, encourage an open way of thinking. I gave examples of our Brains Trust, the groups that give feedback all the way from the team level to the CEO level, and they're all publicly available in videos. Work out how to set that tone from day one. We try to do that with our graduates and our new starters with the blogging and that. It makes a huge difference. It has a compounding effect years down the track. And lastly, open way of being. We try to set the tone early with the blogs. Think about your remote team members and think about sharing life outside work. So I think that's it from me. Hope you've left slightly inspired about the different ways you can think about encouraging your teams to be open. I appreciate it. Thanks.